nothing really wrong about that, but they're buying into the notion that this is a generational issue and that we have to change based on a generalization about an entire generation. And I think that is dangerous, especially if the evidence is not there to support that. Perensky, probably most of you have heard of Mark Perensky. He's probably one of the most strident net generation hypesters, and he coined the term digital natives and digital immigrants. And his writing really, in my view, goes over the top. I mean, he talks, as you can see from this quote, digital natives accustomed to the twitch speed, multitasking, random access, graphics first, active, connected, fun, fantasy, quick payoff world of their video games, MTV, and internet are bored by most of today's education, well-meaning as it may be. The cognitive differences of the digital natives cry out for new approaches to education with a better fit. Carol Barone, another person with strong education credentials from EDUCAUSE, again, not as strident, but is buying into the whole notion that this is a generational issue. The arrival of the net generation on campus is causing unrest in the classroom. A wave of young people empowered to create knowledge, not merely absorb it, now flows in and out of the classroom, calling into question the convictions and processes that have served as the foundation of traditional higher education. It remains to be seen whether traditional higher education will adjust sufficiently to truly engage the net generation. And one of the things that's interesting about this, somebody my age, is this sounds very similar to what was said about the 60s generation. So a lot of this discourse around the net generation is like, I've heard it all before. But if you read, particularly if you read Tapscott, he continually compares the net generation to what he calls the boomer generation, arguing that the boomer generation was this sort of passive group of people who just were willing to accept what was told to them and were only interested in career and had no sort of social conscience. And I'm thinking that just doesn't make sense it doesn't jive with my memory of that generation. So what are some of the claims about this generation? What are some of these people saying specifically about the generation? Well, fundamentally, they're talking about the fact that because the generation born around 1982 has been essentially immersed in technology from birth, in digital technology, that they are fundamentally different than other generations. Different in the sense of the technologies that they're using and how they use the technology. And this, they say, is having a profound impact on a whole range of activity, but specifically on how they learn. So again, from Perensky, he says that today's students think and process information fundamentally differently than their predecessors. These differences go further and deeper than most educators suspect or realize. And he actually argues that the brains of this generation are actually fundamentally different than previous and other generations, and based on the fact, or as a result of the fact that they've been using this technology. So getting more specific, what they're saying is that this generation, this entire generation, are sophisticated users of all sorts of digital technology. That they have that for them technology is almost like air. They don't see it as technology. It's just there. It's just something that they use. That they have a different relationship with information and media. That they are no longer the kind of passive consumers of information, passive users of the internet, but they are active collaborators, generators, participants. So a very different relationship with the information and the media. And then as a result of those first two characteristics, they actually learn differently, that they are much more, they have a much stronger preference for experiential learning. They want to get their hands on, that they want interaction, they want collaboration. They don't want to be passive learners. And so as a result of that, they have different expectations of school, of work, and of life. It doesn't stop there. The list is quite extensive, and I've actually left some things out that are not specific to, or I don't think have implications for education. So they are, according to the proponents, they are expert multitaskers, which, and they're not just talking about the ability to, to do two things at once, but they're talking about the ability to do many things at once and to do them all very well. They have a need for immediate feedback. They crave feedback. They want constant feedback in their learning. They prefer teamwork and collaboration. They're experiential learners. I mentioned that already. They're very social. They are ambitious, career-oriented. And then two characteristics that come from Tapscott's latest work. He talks about freedom